Hi, I'm in the middle of preaching a series of 4 messages about being part of something bigger. And the first message was about finding your purpose, and this past week's message was about forming a picture. I've been talking about this man named Felice Benuzzi, who was an Italian POW in 1941 and was kept for a year in a camp in remote East Africa with other prisoners in a place that was pretty monotonous and terrible, dusty, no vegetation, beetles in his suitcase. It was a place where you were really cooped up, and 25,000 people in this camp. There came a time after about a year where he was transferred to another camp. And when he and the other soldiers were stuck at the train station, they saw people moving around doing whatever they pleased. And it struck him at that time that he knew his purpose, and that his purpose was to be free. When he saw people that could do whatever they wanted, he knew that being cooped up was not his identity, and that he needed to find a way to assert his identity. His identity was located in being free. When he made it to the next camp to which he was transferred along with his fellow soldiers, it was raining. It was raining like crazy. Things were foggy all over the place. Your boots, when you walked through the mud, would just stick with inches of mud when you would pull them out of the mud and make a weird sound. And when they were at this camp, when they first arrived, they saw that they were up against a hill with some vegetation, but it was cloudy and foggy, and so they really couldn't see much more than that. The next morning when they woke up, one of his fellow soldiers said to him, "You've got to come outside and see this. It's incredible." And he looked up, and what he saw as the clouds and fog had lifted was the most magnificent mountain he had ever seen before. He'd learn later that it was 17,000 feet tall. And where their camp was located, this mountain, they were at the base of Mount Kenya. And he knew when he saw that mountain how he was going to fulfill his purpose of being free. It was going to be impossible for him or anyone else to permanently escape the camps. They couldn't go on foot. They wouldn't make it to any other country. And if they tried to get other transportation, they would have to have a lot of money and faked documents. They would have to, as Italians, try to blend into the environment that they were in with local customs and language. It just wasn't going to be possible. But he knew that he could fulfill his purpose of being free for a time, not to let the camps completely confine him. But he knew what he would do. The picture of what he wanted to do was to climb Mount Kenya. And you'll get to hear over coming weeks how that happened. In terms of forming a picture, God speaks to us through pictures, and God has historically spoken to God's people through pictures. We read 2 passages in worship on Sunday. One was Exodus 3, 1 through 8, and the other was Jeremiah 32. In Exodus 3, that's a famous story with a burning bush where Moses hears his call. And God says to him that he would be the leader of God's people, and he would lead them out of Egypt and out of slavery, and that he would lead them to a land where God would show them, a land that God had promised them, and that would be a land of milk and honey. God gave them a picture so that land didn't sound like a concept, but that land had something they could coalesce around. The picture was something they could hope for and something they could look forward to. In the passage of Jeremiah, God tells Jeremiah, in the middle of the city being besieged and of his fellow Jews being taken captive by the Babylonians, in the middle of that terrible time, God says that he'll send someone to Jeremiah, and he does, and tells him to buy a field there. To buy a field in the middle of a place that seems like it's going to be desolate because it's being utterly conquered at the moment. It seemed like a crazy thing to do, but it was a sign of hope. God knew, and God had told them, that the Israelites would get carried off and that they would be in exile, they would be in captivity for a long time. But God told Jeremiah that people would then once again live in this land, and they would plant, and they would pluck up, and they would have livestock, and the land would be fruitful. Rather than simply saying to the people through Jeremiah, the future's going to be better, God gave them a picture, and it looked like flourishing land. We also know that pictures were an effective way to speak in the civil rights movement. We're familiar with Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. And when he dreamed of a future, he didn't just say a better future or a hopeful future. He said it would be a future where he could hope that little black boys and little black girls could walk hand in hand with little white boys and little white girls and be friends and be part of a hopeful future together. And it wasn't a vague concept to live into the purpose of freedom. It was a picture given to us by the preacher Martin Luther King Jr. So, to be part of something bigger, part of what we need is to form a picture. And this is something that we're doing at Avery right now. We have a vision discernment team who's working to help discern a picture of what it will look like if we fulfill our purpose well in this time and place. Our purpose is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. What will it look like if Avery does this at this time in this place? And to be able to form that picture, we're doing a couple things. I want to show you a picture that I showed in worship on Sunday. You might remember Venn diagrams from when you were in school. And this is an amateur production, so hold on just one second while I show you this picture. This is the picture that I showed in worship on Sunday. This picture shows us at the top our purpose. Our purpose is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And here in the blue circle, this is our church. Our church, we're going to be assessing, or currently are assessing, our strengths, our passions, our gifts, our talents, our assets, and our values. And we're also going to be assessing the community. That's this pink circle on this side, the community. And we're going to look at the needs and concerns and challenges and opportunities of the community, and where our gifts and strengths can be leveraged to meet the needs and concerns of the community in disciple-making ministries. So what we're doing with the Vision Discernment team is half the team is overseeing church members who are conducting interviews of other folks at Avery to see what our strengths are and what we've historically been good at, and to hear a little bit about what they value in the congregation. And then the other half of the Vision Discernment team is overseeing church members who are doing interviews in the community with local legislators, with law enforcement, with the schools, with direct service organizations, so that we can hear what their needs are and how a church could potentially help. And then there are two more components that go into the assessment of the community. One is to do demographic research. We have a couple of members working on what are the demographics of our nearby neighborhoods and what is the projection for the demographics over the next couple of years for those neighborhoods. And then we have another group that's doing prayer walking and are going around our local communities and talking to people who are out, identifying themselves as people from Avery, and asking if there's anything that we can pray for that person, or if there's a need in the community that we can pray for. And some of those have been really fruitful already, and I'll be eager for you to hear about that. In each of these situations, in the situation with Moses, in the situation with Jeremiah, in the situation of civil rights in the 60s and now, it might be tempting to look around and say, that the picture of the future that's being provided seems unrealistic somehow. Moses might have looked around and said, what? We're enslaved in Egypt. You think you're going to give us a land of milk and honey? And Jeremiah might have said, what? We're under siege. This is a place that will be fruitful again. And Martin Luther King Jr. can look around and say, what? This is a place of hatred and division, and there's going to be a time where people will be united. And we might look around and say, wow, this future vision that's being discerned doesn't look like where we are now. But in all of these cases, these are hopeful pictures. And the picture isn't the be-all and end-all. The picture is what we're going to be working together toward to try to live out our purpose well. So I hope you'll join us for future messages. I'll have one each of the next 2 weeks. Hopefully our tech will work, and then I'll be able to, you'll be able to see our videos here on YouTube. Thank you.